I obviously don't get mic'd up a lot. Yes, I'm the founder of Gopher Lady. This is a local surf school, just like sweet Kathleen has introduced me. I've had it for the past 3 years. I really founded it out of a need that I saw when I have been surfing out here in South Florida the past 10 years. And I learned how to surf about 15 years ago. I was always the only girl in the lineup, and so you'll see on my website my slogan, just because you're the only bikini in the lineup doesn't mean you shouldn't be there. So it was really my COVID baby. I know everyone's having their COVID babies right now, but mine's 3 years old. And it's all of my little Gophers running around with their Gopher hats, and I get so pumped for them. So I want to do like kind of the FAQs of Gopher Lady, because sometimes people get confused because I do so many different things. So pretty much I teach private lessons, I do group clinics for first timers and beginners, and then whenever our Florida surf conditions aren't the best, which you can only imagine with our weather in South Florida, that's whenever I'm doing upcycle art. I'm taking resources from, shout out to Resource Depot. Yes, raise your hand, yes. Creative Mornings has their sponsor, and Resource Depot is my ultimate sponsor, and I will be their hype woman forever. Because during a time of a lot of pain in our world during COVID, I went to Resource Depot and I just started crafting again. I started making art again, and it was affordable. I lost my job due to COVID. I was managing a retreat venue, and that plummeted. And so, yeah, during COVID, during these times of deep, dark pain, I know that so many of you have probably felt that that kind of wall that you hit during that pain, that almost you don't know what to do from there, and so you choose to do what feels best and maybe most creative for you. At least for me, I usually go to either my collaging or I go to the ocean. So that's kind of a little bit about Gopher Lady. And it's funny to be chosen as the speaker for pain, I think. But I am really stoked too. And so, like, when I think of the word pain, I think each one of us has different either memories come up, co-workers, or just different emotions that suddenly rise to the surface. And so for me, I feel like at least having grief happen a lot in my life, I was thinking about how to describe it, and at least for me, grief has been like this like unsneezable sneeze, like, you know, like it like builds up and you like want to get it out and you want to just like, but you can't. And it's kind of just like always building up there. And so when we think of pain, you know, there's physical, there's emotional, all types of pain. And so I just want to talk to you guys about how I've been through some of those different things and how I have learned to move through it. And not stuff it, because that's what I was wired to do, is stuff and run away from pain. If anybody's into like the Enneagram or like personality things, I'm a 7. I love fleeing from pain. And then life told me, no, honey, you're just gonna dig into it and you're gonna walk through it and paddle through it. And so, for me, this even goes back to in high school, I had an extremely high pain tolerance. And so, like Kathleen said, when I was in 7th grade, I lost my brother to suicide, and This was something that no 7th grader should ever go through, right? And so I barely knew how to open my locker or anything like that. And I had no clue what to do with this huge pain in my life. My brother Max, he was someone who skated, surfed, he was creative, and so, you know, my mom sent me to talk therapy. She sent me to grief camp. She sent me to just everything that a great freaking mom does. And she also let me go paddle out with his surfboard. And that was the most impactful thing that I did through that pain. So, not to say that any of talk therapy, grief camp weren't helpful. That was just one of the most impactful things that I could do, was to go out into the ocean and to let my emotions go. To go out there and to either scream, cry, whatever, to do everything that I couldn't do on land. To let that out in the ocean just between myself and my brother. And so from that point, it was, like I said, my pain tolerance kind of shot up, just, you know, like all our nervous systems do when things happen in our life. My pain tolerance shot up, my emotions, you know, chose one. I was like, I'm going to be the optimist. I'm going to take everything negative to the positive. That's science. And so even when I was in, I was like in 9th or 10th grade, I was playing volleyball, I was playing 3 sports, I was like in 3 Southern Baptist youth groups at a time. You know, like I was doing all the things to run. And so during that time, I was like really hungry. I didn't really know why. And so after like a 5-game volleyball night, I'm like, Mom, like I'm really hungry. And so then she takes me to urgent care because she's like, okay, little concerning, your metabolism's crazy, whatever. Turns out my appendix burst 3 months prior. Like I should have died day of. Don't know how that happened. It exploded, solidified in my stomach. Not sure. But my body was like, you don't feel anything. You're fine. You're fine. I had no self-awareness between pain and hunger, which can happen when we're young, you know? And so there's this like distinct difference that I've seen during painful times in my life where I'm aware and I'm validating the feelings that I'm having or the pain that I'm having, and then when I'm not. And so that's just a funny situation that happened again even later in life when I tore my ACL, didn't know for 9 months until I tore my meniscus. So these things are like super physical, right? And I don't know if anybody else has been to therapy, but my therapist, she is always the preacher of emotional pain is literally quite the same as our physical. And having the time to take surgery on yourself and get a licensed professional to look at your pain and to talk through that with you or tell you what's going on. For my ACL, like I had some awareness and some validation, but I went to like the doctor that was the wrong one and he didn't check me for ACL. So there was like this validation and this awareness, but there was not the right like tools and knowledge. And so throughout my journey, I've just come to grow in my awareness and validation and my tools for getting through, getting through and living through these circumstances that we go through, right? Holidays are kind of the hardest with a lot of us. There are uncontrollable circumstances, whether it's, you had someone pass away in your life and holidays bring up things, or whether it's that, the Christmas pageant was ruined and you can't see Jimmy play or whatever. And so I've been leading these surf therapy groups, and some of you have come, which is great. And I have loved facilitating an awareness of self and the ocean. This is the one thing that made me progress in my surfing the most, is when I became aware of what my body was doing in the water and aware of what the ocean was doing. Because I think when we kind of list out and take account of what's going on in our body and our life and what's, just like list out what's going on in our world, it's easier to kind of grapple, and you can hold it in your hand, right? You can recognize that sneeze is coming up, and you're not just like really freaking tense. You're like, oh wait, it's just a sneeze. I just need to sneeze. And so for me, I'm just kind of going to go through some comparisons I see between surfing awareness. So when I take you out surfing, which I'm sure we'll go sometime, I always do my surf check. And if you've been in my lessons, you know what I list out. I list out the surf conditions you see in the ocean. There's so much going on out there. I'm sure you just look out and you're like, it's beautiful. We live in paradise. But there's so many things that happen within our weather, environment, blah, blah, blah. And specifically in South Florida, we have so many conditions going on that make it absolutely whomping and beautiful and hurricane horrific out there. And so before taking on surfing and going out there, I do my surf check. I check out what's the wind doing, what's the tide doing, what's the swell coming through. And so if you want to break down some of these conditions, I break down the tide, or I break down the wind as this is a really quick changing condition. These are conditions in our life that they change by the minute, they change by the day, they change by the second. We live in Florida. Wind could just come wipe out all my papers. And so these are ever-changing conditions in our life. And then we have the tides, which we know, a lot of us know, there is a low and a high. It's a rhythmic thing in our life, but it's always changing. That's the most consistent thing, is change. So we have these rhythmic changes in our life, whether that's seasonal for you, whether you're going through a pregnancy, a new marriage, whether it's a new coworker, whether you have your semester going and this is just the time where you gotta grind, or maybe this is just the time where you chill. But knowing that there's these rhythms of life, just like tidal changes, that we can start to plan for, and we can look out and know, like, okay, this is coming. And then we have our swells, which is kind of just like a surf term, but it actually refers to things. So swells happen hundreds of miles out in the middle of the ocean. They can be caused by wind swells, refraction swells, ground swells, all these different types of swells. 50, 100 miles out, 800, I don't know. And so they're formed out in the middle of our ocean, and they've been forming and coming our way to the beach that we're doing our surf lesson at. And they've always been there out in the deep, but they don't crash until it's shallow, right? And so when those waves are coming, sometimes those ground swells, they line up with the tide, and then they line up with the wind to make this beautiful, perfect wave that I can just cross-step up to, and I'm just cruising. But then sometimes those hurricane swells come through, 30-mile-an-hour winds, and the tide is low, and if you don't get out, you're gonna get whomped onto the sandbar. And so we have these conditions that are always changing in our lives, and we can't control these, obviously. But the cheesy saying, you can learn to surf. And so I would just love for you guys to just try to imagine some of the conditions in your life and be able, this has just been really helpful for me since I made these correlations, just being able to identify what's like these huge ground swells that keep knocking me out, that I don't have the surfboard for, I don't have the right equipment for, and what are the conditions that I know that I can like thrive in, and how can I maybe buy a different equipment, different surfboard to taking on those conditions that might be harder. So whether that's like identifying, your wind that just like knocks you off your feet out of nowhere. You're like, this keeps throwing me off, man, and it's just creating this pain point in my life where I just I can't get over this little part. Or maybe it's this rhythmic thing. Maybe it's your periods throwing you off. That's seasonal. It's rhythmic. Maybe it's your partner on their period. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry. But being able to identify those just uncontrollable conditions in your life and how you might be able to grab your boards to taking those on. So there are different types of surfboards for everything. I'm giving you a little 101 this morning. Short boards are for big waves. Big boards are for small waves. And so, maybe you are going throughout your week this week or month and you want to just imagine yourself like, okay, these waves, they are coming. I am seeing these sets come through. I just have to take them on. Okay, just which board am I going to choose? And whatever tool, surfboard, equipment that you have in your pocket that you have taught yourself to take on things, I hope that you can claim it, because I think it took me a really long time to kind of claim how I take things on, that I take things on in a really funky way. I make up words for things. I collage, and maybe they're a little weird sometimes. And maybe I'll ditch my boyfriend to go surf because that's what I need to do. And maybe I'm going to surf when it's the crappiest conditions out, but I just need to dunk my head in. So I hope that you guys can identify with some of those things and that you already kind of have something in your head that kind of correlates to that. And I hope that each of you during this holiday season can, if you have those pain points come up, I hope you can either create through it. Some of our best art has come through pain and low points. You can either create through it or paddle through it, or maybe you just watch those waves go by and you say, I'm gonna get my equipment another time. I can't afford that right now. I'm just gonna watch the waves go by. So thank you guys so much.